Saturday, May the 18th in Saudi Arabia, one of the biggest fights in the history of the fight game takes place. It's Tyson Fury versus Oleksandr Usyk for the undisputed heavyweight championship. And today we are talking about the journey of Oleksandr Usyk and how he went from being a young boy in Ukraine to fighting on the biggest stage of them all. Now, Usyk was born on the 17th of January 1987 to a very humble working class family. His mother was in construction, his father was in the military. Now, him and his two siblings were born in Simferopol. Trying my best to pronounce that, God help us. It's the second largest city in the Crimean Peninsula of southern Ukraine. And due to its strategic location in the country, it has a long history of political conflict. And in 2014, it was occupied by Russian forces, which triggered the war between Ukraine and Russia. And we've got a nice little photograph here of Mr. and Mrs. Usyk and baby Oleksandr here. And as you can see, Papa Usyk is a big, well-built man there. So that must be where the genetics come from. And a couple of more photographs here of Oleksandr looking mischievous and a little bit grumpy, and another photograph here. He hasn't changed a bit. Now, when Oleksandr was 6, he moved to Chernihiv, which was the original place his mother was from. And he lived on a farm with his family and went to school like any other kid. But worryingly for his parents, he did develop a very severe case of pneumonia, which caused him to be in and out of hospital for the best part of a year. And sometimes he was in hospital for months at a time. The doctors told his parents it could be fatal. And you think, I wonder what impact it must have had on him going through something so horrific at such a young age. I mean, I nearly died when I was 3 years old, and it's one of my earliest memories, and that sort of thing never leaves you. Not to make this all about me, I'm just saying I can relate, okay? That's it. Before you get on this. And the family really felt like it was a miracle that Usyk survived such a difficult thing to go through. And it was then that his grandmother started taking him to church. And even though Usyk wasn't particularly religious, he did enjoy church, and he would then start praying on his own after that. Now, there wasn't much to do in the village for Usyk, but one thing he did love to do was play football. So he really focused on building his body up from a young age. He would do squats, press-ups, running, swimming, horse riding, anything athletic, he was about it. And even at a young age, he loved to do anything martial arts related, so he was big into wrestling and karate and stuff like that. And when he wasn't doing sporty stuff, he'd be working on the farm with the family, looking after the cattle, cleaning out the stables, and then he'd have like little part-time jobs on the side where he'd be selling apricots and ice creams, making a little bit of extra cash to help the family. Because even though his parents both were working 2 or 3 jobs, they were still struggling financially. And you can tell that their struggle really stayed with Usyk. Like, he's never forgotten the meaning of hard work. And there's even a quote from Usyk where he says, "I was praying as a kid, asking God, why is this happening to me? Why is this so difficult to me? I was suffering." And as sad as it is to read that about Usyk, it is amazing how common it is in great fighters that struggle against poverty that they have as a child, from Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Francis Ngannou. That's what makes them great. That determination of, I will fight my way out of this. And it's so clear that that was a massive reason as to why Oleksandr Usyk became great. And in recent interviews, Usyk has said he really works hard so that his children are never in a position where they could be facing anything that could ruin their life. And that fear of, you know, being broke, not having opportunities, of living in a really difficult situation, it's drove him to a point of success for himself, but not just for himself, for his children. Now, in 2002, when Usyk was 15, his family moved back to Crimea, where he would play football for an academy side in the Ukrainian Premier League called Simferopol. Now, the fact that he's 15 and playing at a high level in football at that age and not even doing boxing at that point shows how amazing of an athlete he was to end up going into a different sport and going as far as he has. I can't imagine Tyson Fury playing football at 15. But heartbreakingly for Usyk, his father had to explain to him that the family just couldn't afford to pay for the training and for the uniforms anymore, and he wouldn't be able to continue with football. However, the father did find out that there was a boxing trainer in town called Sergey Lepin, and that training was far cheaper than the football training. And his dad thought it would be really good for Oleksandr to learn how to fight so that he could look after himself. And his dad even trained him how to use a knife in hand-to-hand combat, but he explained to him that you must only use this for protection. His dad really comes across as like a good man with like good morals and really old-fashioned gentleman. And he has a great photograph of Oleksandr Usyk in the early days with his hands up here, completely unaware that one day he would be competing for the most coveted prize in all of boxing. And Usyk actually said in his first ever boxing training session, he got beaten up real bad, and it sparked an anger inside of him, which is really interesting to think now because he seems such a happy, calm guy. But at 15, there was a lot going on inside this young man. He admitted he wanted to quit, But more than that, he wanted revenge. And with his father and his coach's encouragement, he kept training and kept improving. And one man who would inspire Oleksandr Usyk was another man whose feet didn't stop moving in the ring. The greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali. And he became fascinated with Muhammad Ali's story, style, and it spurred him on to want to be better. And ironically, he has the exact same birthday as Muhammad Ali. All great people are born in January, if you ask me. Champion podcaster, thank you very much. And the sad thing was, is at 15 years old in Ukraine, he was considered to be too old to actually start boxing in order to become any good at it. You know, most great fighters actually start a lot younger than that. But luckily, Sergey Lepin saw something in him. And Lepin's own son said of his dad, "My father has a gift. He can see people and determine on first sight whether the person will be just a regular boxer or if he's determined enough to become a champion." And he believed in Usyk. And after a few years of dedicated training, Usyk would meet Anatoly Lomachenko, the father of legendary boxer Vasily Lomachenko. And Lomachenko Sr. would take Usyk on as his new student and help him start his career as an amateur boxer. And he would train Usyk identically to the way he would train his own son. Now, for Vasily Lomachenko, his style is all about intelligence, movement, outworking your opponent, outthinking them by setting traps, constantly moving, keeping them guessing, fighting him as like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube that's spinning. It's very difficult and you don't get a lot of opportunities to solve the problem. And Lomachenko Sr. would train Usyk in the exact same way, but the difference was is Usyk is a very big man. So for Lomachenko Sr. to get Usyk to do what his son could do was going to be very challenging because big men generally aren't that intelligent, aren't that quick, and aren't that fit. But most big men aren't Oleksandr Usyk. And despite the size difference between Lomachenko and Usyk, Usyk would be able to do everything Lomachenko could do. Usyk would do lots of drills to make him a better fighter, but not just physical ones, mental ones also. Things to help his memory, his peripheral vision, his problem solving. Usyk's team thought outside the box as to how to make him a better fighter. They wanted him to be not just a fit and strong fighter, but a thinking fighter. So you can imagine how Usyk's brain is becoming conditioned to see things and immediately recognize, okay, this is this, and constantly solve problems without having to pay too much attention to them. And watching Usyk do these kind of problem-solving tasks, it gives you an idea of why he's so much smarter than the competition, because he goes the extra mile and he's trained his brain to do that complex problem-solving in a way that other fighters haven't. And what is fighting? It's problem solving, just with dire consequences, right? If you don't solve the problem, you get punched in the face. But you don't always want to be getting punched in the face to do the problem solving bit. And he's removing that element of danger and punishment and getting his brain constantly thinking the way it should be. Now, under the tutelage of Mr. Lomachenko, Usyk thrived in his amateur boxing career. He went on to win the 2008 European Championships, the 2011 World Championships, and then qualified for the 2012 Summer Olympics in London. And he did all of that at the age of 25 years old. Now, before Usyk would set off for London, his father sadly would fall ill in Ukraine. And that really couldn't have been easy for Usyk. You've got the biggest challenge of your life. You're trying to become Olympic champion, and your old man, who's your hero, is ill. And if that isn't bad enough, the competition was stiff that year. One of the fighters he had to overcome on his path to the final was Arthur Beterbiev, who is one of the best boxers in boxing right now. So that tells you just how stiff the competition was. But he did overcome him, and he made it to the final. And in that final was an Italian called Russo, who gave him a right good run for his money. Going into the final round, they were equal at 8 points each. The pressure was on. And in amateur boxing, you can be the worst fighter and still win the round, right? You've just got to outland him. So, you know, there was no guarantees at all Usyk was going to win this fight. And the cardio, you're going so flat out because it's only 3 rounds that you've got to give 110% for every second. And your defense has to be so sharp. And you can see where Usyk would learn a lot of the skills that made him so good at the pro level. But Usyk's outlanding him and he gets out the way. And that's the combination that gets Usyk out in front, I think. And he slips him and you can see the frustration in Russo there. 6 seconds left. Usyk lands another combination, and I think Russo knows he's beaten here. Yeah. There he is.
He has done it. What a look of relief.
It's lovely to see that. And he got the gold medal for his old man. Now, he said after he'd won the gold medal, he got back to the hotel room and he rang his dad and they spoke on the phone for 1 hour, which was something that they didn't really do. Like, they don't come from a part of the world or an era where men are chit-chatting on the phone for an hour expressing their feelings, right? But this was a monumental moment in their lives together. As a father, Mr. Usyk had guided his son to a better life. And as a son, Usyk had listened to his dad and delivered in return the gold medal to say, yeah, I achieved it all, Dad. I'm a world champion now, and your son is never going to go through what you've been through now. And what else does a father and son relationship need after that? And very, very sadly, not long after that conversation, Oleksandr Usyk's father passed away. And when Usyk talks about it now, he reflects in a way of like, maybe that was our way of saying goodbye to each other, because they never did that. They never did that long 1 hour conversation. But he has admitted that it's changed the way he behaves towards his children. He is very talkative and communicative towards his kids about how much he loves them and how proud of them he is. So it did leave a bit of a mark. But it is very beautiful that his dad was able to witness his son achieve greatness before he left the world. And Usyk has credited his dad with pretty much everything he's ever achieved, right? He's very grateful to his old man and said that his time, energy, dedication that he put into me made all of my dreams a reality. The problem after the Olympics was, what is my dream now? This has been everything. What do I do now? And in 2013, he retired from amateur boxing with an unbelievable record of 335 wins to 15 losses. And he signed with the Klitschko brothers to start his professional career as a cruiserweight. And Usyk's abilities as a cruiserweight made him a nightmare for everyone. For a start, he's a southpaw, which makes him very difficult to fight against. His footwork is genius. He knows exactly where to be in the ring at all times. He will make you think you're just close enough to hit him, and he's out of range before you know it, and you're paying the price for making the mistake of thinking you could actually touch him. And if it's bad enough that he's more intelligent than you, he'll then work harder than you, throwing more punches than you, forcing you to work so hard just to keep up with him that he drowns you. And many, many fighters paid the price for thinking they could hang straight off the bat. First fight, Romero, TKO, 5th round. Second fight, Mendoza, TKO, 4th round. Third fight, Nsafoa, KO, 3rd round. Fourth fight, Krenz, KO, 4th round. Fifth fight, Brewer, TKO, 7th round. Sixth fight, Venter, TKO, 9th round. 7th fight, Knyazhov, TKO, 8th round. 8th fight, Muller, TKO, 3rd round. 9th fight, Rodriguez, TKO, 7th round. 10th fight, Glowacki, unanimous decision, 12th round. And on Oleksandr Usyk went until he became the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world against Gassiev. But I think my favourite performance from Usyk as a cruiserweight was against Tony Bellew, where he defended his undisputed title. You see, Tony was a clever fighter, and he could bang. And he was riding high after a massive win against David Haye. And there was a feeling of maybe, just maybe, because it's in the UK, Tony might be able to give the genius some problems. And to be fair to Tony, he really did a little bit. But this was where we would see Usyk at his problem-solving genius best, with that engine just going, pushing the fight, and forcing Bellew to work harder and harder and harder until he couldn't anymore. He was so clever that he made Tony Bellew give so much energy just to keep up with him in the first half of the fight. And when Usyk upped the levels, Bellew just couldn't keep up with him. And it ended with this absolutely devastating knockout as he staggered Bellew and then shuts the lights out. And as much as Bellew's a warrior, there was no way he could carry on after that. And another thing I really appreciate about Oleksandr Usyk, although he keeps beating English fighters, he's such a gracious winner. He's so respectful, and he really does fight with honour. He feels like an old-fashioned martial artist. And I think that really goes back to the morals that his dad's instilled in him. You know, we fight because we have to, not because we want to bully people. And he really respects his opponents. And ironically, Tyson Fury couldn't be more different, you know, in terms of the way they talk about their opponents before a fight. But win, lose or draw, whatever happens against Tyson Fury, Oleksandr Usyk will be respectful, always. And a year later, Usyk would make the switch to the heavyweight division. After relinquishing his cruiserweight titles, he had a new goal of becoming heavyweight champion of the world. But not just heavyweight champion of the world, undisputed. And that would put him in very prestigious company. That only one other man has been both cruiserweight and heavyweight undisputed champion. And that man is Evander Holyfield, which we all know was an absolute legendary fighter. Usyk started his heavyweight journey with a win over Chaz Witherspoon, who wasn't expected to win, let's be honest, but he retired on a stool and Usyk looked fine. It was a dip in your toe in the water moment for his journey. He then moved on to bigger fish in Derek Chisora, who was a bruising heavyweight, not in his prime, but still able to cause a threat and try and push Usyk around, bully him, and try and put a dent in him. And a lot of people were slightly underwhelmed by the performance from Usyk. I think they wanted something a bit more spectacular, a destructive finish, but also not giving credit to, at the time, Chisora still had a little bit left in the tank there, and he's a much naturally bigger man. And Usyk was still acclimatizing to the heavyweight division, having been used to weighing a lot less and not used to taking power shots from such big men. That being said, he clearly won the fight, despite a few of Chisora's old mates in the media saying it was a draw or it was close. It wasn't close. And Usyk almost had lulled people into a false sense of security as to think, like, maybe he's not that dangerous of a fight. Maybe he's just not big enough for the division. And the fight was set up between Anthony Joshua and Oleksandr Usyk, and they found out the hard way that he's good. He's real good. Now, this fight was really an eye-opener for people as to how good Usyk is, because as great as Anthony Joshua is, Usyk made that win look quite comfortable. Anthony Joshua is a power puncher, but in order to land on you, you have to stay still for a second so that he can actually connect. And that didn't happen. The rumor was that Usyk hadn't been doing your 3-minute round training. He'd been training for 4-minute rounds and only having 30 seconds rest. So when he was in there, he was like the Energizer Bunny. That head was like a windscreen wiper. It was not staying still. And him being a southpaw caused AJ problems and confused him. And the footwork of Usyk was on another level. It felt like AJ was asking, like, where are you? Why can't I just nail this guy like he could with everybody else? And despite Usyk not having the power of the bigger man, he had the brains. And that's what won him this fight. Because like we see in all of those mind training tests that Usyk does, he thinks about everything before he does it. I think he knew before he even got in the ring what rounds he was guaranteed he was going to win. So that he knew when they call that decision, I'm the one winning this. Those first few rounds, he was just bagging them, making sure he'd start fast at the start of the round, maybe take a little bit of an energy break in the middle, and then finish strong so that the judges would remember he started the best, he finished the best. That's key. And these are the things that when you've had 335 amateur fights, you learn about winning rounds in the judges' eyes. As great as Anthony Joshua is, he doesn't have that level of experience. And if AJ did start around good and Usyk was feeling a bit tired in those middle rounds, he'd go, you know what, I'm going to give him this one, but I'm not going to take too much damage. I'm going to recover, and then I'll win the next one. And before you know it, we've got 3 or 4 rounds left. If the finish line is in sight, and Usyk just turns that stamina up. And AJ, despite being a very strong and athletic and explosive athlete, he couldn't keep up with him. And AJ's time to win that fight by knockout had been and gone. And the knockout power, it wasn't there anymore. He was just trying to keep up with Usyk, and he was struggling to do so. And that was really evident in the final round. And Usyk pushed AJ so hard that he just collapsed in the corner after that. And you notice Oleksandr Usyk shedding those tears, looking up at the sky and talking, and you just know he's talking to his dad. And that's such a special thing when you understand the backstory of this man, the journey that his dad pushed him on, and now he's fulfilling all of those dreams. Now, just 6 months later, when Usyk was in London, he found out from his wife that war had broken out in his home country of Ukraine. He travelled back immediately to be with his wife and children, and some of his friends' homes had even been destroyed through the conflict. And one of Usyk's homes in the country had even been occupied and used as a Russian military base, which is fucking mental, by the way. So Usyk made sure to get his family to safety as quick as he could, and then after that, he joined his fellow countrymen on the front line as part of the Territorial Defence Force. And there was footage came out of Usyk launching bombs and carrying a gun with his mates, and he was really doing it, right? It wasn't just a fucking photo opportunity. He was about that life. And I don't know how many rich men in his position who don't need to do that would have done it anyway for their country. So I guess it comes back again to the honour and the values that his father instilled in him. However, after a while, his comrades and the government told him the best way you can represent this country is in the ring. They wanted him to use his platform to represent the country. So that's exactly what he did. And he still talks to a lot of the guys who are on the front line right now. He records videos to send them words of encouragement, and they do the same back for him. And he says he really gets a lot out of it because they're in the middle of this terrible battle, and he's thinking, all right, I've just got to go and fight one guy. I think that keeps him really grounded and humble. And he said now he's not boxing for a belt anymore, but instead boxing for all of the people defending Ukraine. Now, very little is actually known about Usyk's family life because he keeps it really private, and I really do respect that. What we do know is that he's been married for, I think, 15 years. He's got 4 children, and his wife, who he claims has made him the man he is today, actually runs a foundation that is set up to help the Ukrainian people who've been impacted by the conflict. And after beating Anthony Joshua for the title, Usyk would then do the right thing and give AJ AJ the chance to win the belt back in the rematch in Saudi Arabia. AJ was unsuccessful for all of the same reasons as the first fight. Usyk was too clever, too fit. Although AJ did look a little bit better, it just wasn't enough. And Usyk would then defend the title again against another Brit in Daniel Dubois, who had a little bit of success. He even dropped Usyk, but it was ruled a low blow. That was controversial. But what wasn't controversial was when Usyk got back up and beat the hell out of Daniel Dubois, proving he was without doubt the man to beat in the heavyweight division, leaving just one man left on the list to prove that Oleksandr Usyk is the greatest of this generation. And that man's name is Tyson Fury. Now, I'm just going to leave that there with you because this is just part one in a 3-part little video series I wanted to make for such a special event. Next episode is Tyson Fury and his road to Oleksandr Usyk. I hope you enjoyed this. I really enjoyed learning more about Oleksandr Usyk. Let me know what you took from the story in the comments below. And don't forget, if you want to book to order the pay-per-view, I'll put the link in the description below. You can book it now using my link and help out the channel. But everyone who watched, I really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like button, stay subscribed to the Pain Game YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.